Imagine you're sitting around a campfire, the night sky stretching endlessly above you, and someone asks, "Where did the Turkish people come from?" It's one of those questions that sparks curiosity, isn't it? The answer isn't simple. It's a tale of ancient farmers, wandering warriors, and a land that's been a meeting point for thousands of years. It is a story written not just in history books, but in the very DNA of the Turkish people, a story we're going to explore together. Picture this: a young nomad from the wide-open steppes of Central Asia, riding westward over 1,000 years ago, dreaming of new lands. His journey is just one piece of a puzzle that scientists are still piecing together today. A puzzle that shows how the Turks became who they are, blending genes and cultures from all corners of the world. Let's start with the land itself, Anatolia, the heart of modern Turkey. For millennia, it's been like a busy crossroads where people from everywhere crossed paths. Long before anyone called it Turkey, there were the Hittites building empires, Greeks setting up cities, Romans marching through, and Byzantines raising grand churches. Then, in 1071, something big happened: the Battle of Manzikert. That's when Turkic tribes from Central Asia, led by their daring leaders, swept into Anatolia, bringing their language, their way of life, and yes, their genes. But here's the twist: they didn't find an empty place. People had been living there for thousands of years, and those locals were already a mix of ancient roots. So when the Turks arrived, it was like adding a new splash of color to an already vibrant painting. Now let's rewind even further, way back to a time when people didn't have cities or even farms. Around 15,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers roamed Anatolia, living off the land. Then something amazing happened. They started farming. Scientists have dug into old bones and found that these first farmers weren't outsiders moving in. They were the kids and grandkids of those same hunter-gatherers. They stayed put, learned to grow crops, and built villages. That means part of what makes a Turk today goes back over 10,000 years, right there in Anatolia. It's like finding out your family's been living in the same neighborhood since forever, passing down stories and genes through the ages. So what happened when those Turkic riders showed up? Did they change everything? Well, not exactly. Scientists have been playing detective with DNA, trying to figure out how much of the Turkish gene pool comes from those Central Asian newcomers. Some say it's about 9%, others guess as high as 30%, the rest. It's a big mix of those ancient Anatolians and folks from nearby places like the Balkans, the Caucasus, and the Middle East. Think of it like a recipe for your favorite dish. Most of the ingredients are from the home kitchen, but a special spice from far away gives it that unique kick. That's the Turkish gene pool, mostly local, with a dash of Central Asian flavor stirred in. But how do they know all this? Picture scientists as explorers sifting through tiny clues in our DNA, like reading an old, smudged map. A huge study in 2021 looked at the genes of 4,000 people from every corner of Turkey. They found tons of variety, but also a thread that ties everyone together. It's like discovering that even though every family has its own quirks, there's something shared that makes them all part of the same big clan. This study, and others like it, show that Turks aren't just one thing. They were a blend of many peoples who've called Anatolia home over thousands of years. Let's zoom out for a moment. Anatolia's right in the middle of everything, squished between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. That's why it's been a hotspot for mixing. Imagine traders from the Balkans swapping goods and maybe marrying locals. Picture warriors from the Caucasus passing through, leaving a little of themselves behind. Add in folks from the Middle East with their own traditions and bloodlines, and you've got a melting pot that's been simmering for centuries. The Ottoman Empire, which stretched across 3 continents, turned up the heat on this mix, bringing even more people together. It's no wonder that if you look at a Turk's DNA today, you might spot traces of Southern Europeans like Greeks or Italians, alongside hints of Central Asian nomads. Here as something cool. This genetic mashup is an just a science fact. It's alive in Turkey. Culture. Think about Turkish food. Kebabs with a Middle Eastern twist, pastries like baklava that whisper of Central Asia, and fresh salads that feel Mediterranean. Or listen to Turkish music, where you hear echoes of both Eastern rhythms and Western melodies. It's the same with the people. Their genes tell a story of all these places coming together, just like their culture does. It's like every Turk carries a little piece of the world inside them, a reminder of how connected we all are. But wait, some people might think, aren't Turks just from Central Asia? That's a fair guess, since the language and the name Turk come from there. But the genes say something different. Most of what makes up a Turk today was already in Anatolia long before those nomads arrived. The Central Asian part is real and important, but it's not the whole story. It's more like a new chapter added to a book that was already pretty thick, and that's what makes this so human. It's not about one group winning out, but about everyone blending together over time. Now let's get personal. Imagine you're Turkish, or maybe you've got a friend who is. If you could peek at their DNA, you'd see bits of those ancient farmers who figured out how to grow wheat 10,000 years ago. You'd find traces of that nomad who rode in from the steppes, dreaming of a new life. There might be a splash from a merchant in the Balkans or a shepherd from the Caucasus. It's like a family tree with branches stretching everywhere, showing how one person can hold so many stories. And if you're not Turkish, well, your own DNA probably has its own wild tale, because that is the thing about humans, we were all mixed up from somewhere. This isn't just a fun fact, though. It matters. Knowing where we come from can change how we see ourselves. In Turkey, where history is everywhere, from ancient ruins to bustling bazaars, genetics adds another layer. It shows that the Turkish people aren't just the heirs of an empire. They are the result of thousands of years of people moving, meeting, and making families. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's beautiful. Scientists keep digging deeper, too. With fancy tools like whole genome sequencing, they're finding more clues every day. One study might tweak the numbers, another might uncover a new link to some far-off place. The picture keeps getting clearer, but it's never quite done. So why should you care? Because this isn't just about Turkey. It's about all of us. The Turks are a perfect example of how humans have always wandered, mixed, and adapted. Their story shows up in their genes, sure, but also in the way they live, eat, and celebrate. It is a reminder that no one is pure anything. We were all a little bit of everywhere. Next time you bite into a piece of Turkish delight or hear a Turkish song, think about that young nomad, that ancient farmer, and all the people in between. They're still here in a way, carried forward in the blood of millions. Let's linger on that ancient farmer for a bit. Picture her, yes her, kneeling in the dirt, planting seeds under the Anatolian sun. She didn't know it, but she was starting something huge. Her people learned to farm, built homes, and stayed. Over thousands of years, others came, some with swords, some with trade goods, but her legacy stuck around. DNA proves it. A big chunk of modern Turks trace back to those early days. It's wild to think that someone from 10,000 years ago could still be part of you, right? That is the power of genetics. It is like a time machine that doesn't need batteries. Then there's that nomad, riding in with his tribe. He's got wind in his hair, a horse under him, and a whole world ahead. His people brought more than just their stuff. They brought themselves, their DNA mixing with the locals. Studies show it's not a huge amount, maybe 10 or 20%, but it's enough to leave a mark. Imagine him settling down, maybe falling for a local girl, their kids growing up with one foot in the steppes and one in Anatolia. That's how genes travel, not just through battles, but through everyday life, love, and families. And don't forget the neighbors. The Balkans, just across the water, sent people over, traders, soldiers, refugees. The Caucasus Mountains, rugged and close, spilled their own folks into the mix. The Middle East, with its ancient cities, added another layer. Each group left something behind, like footprints in the sand that never quite wash away. A study from 2021 showed how this blending created a kind of genetic harmony. Different notes, sure, but all part of the same song. It's why Turks can look so different from one town to the next, yet still feel connected. This mix isn't just numbers on a scientist's chart, it's alive. Walk through Istanbul and you'll see it. Faces that could be from anywhere, food that tastes like everywhere, music that pulls you in from all directions. It's the genes talking, telling you about the Silk Road, the Ottoman days, the ancient past, and it's not stuck in a museum, it's growing. Every new study adds a piece, like finding another page of an old diary. Maybe one day we'll know exactly how much came from where, but even now it's clear Turks are a little bit of everyone. So what's the takeaway? Next time you meet someone Turkish, or anyone really, think about the journey in their blood. For Turks, it's a trip from ancient Anatolia to the Central Asian plains, with stops all over the map. It's not just science. It's a human story, full of adventure, survival, and connection. And it's still going. Scientists will keep digging and will keep learning, but the heart of it is simple. The Turkish people are proof that we were all tied together, across time and space. That nomad, that farmer, they're not just history, they're us. Let's wrap this up with a thought. Picture yourself holding a thread. One end's in your hand, the other's lost in time. For the Turks, that thread weaves through 10,000 years of Anatolia, picks up colors from Central Asia, tangles with the Balkans and beyond. It's a messy, gorgeous weave, and it's still being spun. So when you think of Turkey, don't just see a country, see a story of people who've been mixing it up forever, making something new out of everything old. That's the Turkish tale, and in a way, it's all our tales too.